A very warm welcome. You're joining us here at Hyde Park on Other Derana 24. Tonight on the studios, we'll be talking much about global affairs, just as much as we will be talking about Sri Lanka. I've invited to our studios an ambassador, a diplomat who will be able to discuss with us tensions that are escalating, not just in the Middle East, but about the global wars we're talking about today, to seek answers to where we're heading and how we're going to look at securing small states as Sri Lanka as we look at US constraints in terms of facing reciprocal tariffs with US President Donald Trump's new tariff mechanisms. I've invited to our studios once again His Excellency, the Ambassador of Russia to Sri Lanka, Levan Dzhagaryan. A very warm welcome, Ayubowan, to you.
Thank you.
A pleasure to have you here with us. I mentioned about the Middle East also. You were ambassador to the Middle East for 11 years just before you took over the Sri Lankan mission. This was between 2011 and 2022.
Yes.
You began in Sri Lanka shortly after as
Yes.
ambassador of the mission. How do you feel about what's happening around? We're talking about Ukraine here. We're looking at cessation of hostilities between Russia and Ukraine, and then there's Middle East. There's also the United States imposing reciprocal tariffs across the world. We also see other developments that are really shaking global affairs. From where you stand, how do you look at this?
First of all, thank you for the invitation. For me, it's a big pleasure to be here once again and to have opportunity to talk to you directly, to our Sri Lankan friends, because Sri Lanka is being considered for my country as a friendly country because of your balanced neutral policy, and we highly appreciate it. And just maybe start from conflict around Ukraine, if you don't mind. I will say a few words, you know.
Certainly.
And this crisis has began in 2014, long ago, when thanks to the assistance or interference of the Western countries at that time, USA, Great Britain, France, Germany and Poland, there was an anti-constitutional coup d'etat in the Ukraine when a legitimate president of Ukraine, Yanukovych, was kicked out of the power, and nationalist parties have come to the power in Ukrainian regime. And they started to conduct, let's say, nationalist policy, suppressing Russian minority. And I would say that Ukraine is an artificially created country. You couldn't see it on the map before 1918. And it was comprised by some lands from the western part of Ukraine and eastern part of Ukraine. They are very different. But we were always ready to have very good relations, but you know, Western countries wanted to transform it, to use Ukraine as a leverage against my country. And they just didn't respect the people in Donbass, eastern part, Russian speakers, to have the possibility to use Russian language. The same about Crimea. Crimea historically belongs to Russia, and in 1954, it was gifted to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republics by the former leader of the Communist Party, Nikita Khrushchev, who was ethnic Ukrainian. And no one asked the opinion of the people of Crimea. Do you want to be part of Ukraine or not? That's why what happened in 2014, we had to intervene and to help our compatriots, Russians, in Crimea 2014 and in Donbass as well. We didn't want to start this war. It was provoked by Western countries to defeat Russia, strategically defeat Russia, and they are using Ukraine as a leverage, as a puppet regime. Nowadays, we are continuing our offensive. We are ready to negotiate with the Ukrainians. We don't call it a Russia-Ukrainian war. It's war, proxy war of Western countries against my country. Nowadays, we highly appreciate the policy of Donald Trump. He's very constructive, and he is in favor of political solution. We highly appreciate his efforts, unlike previous administration of Joe Biden. And contrary to it, leading European countries, first of all, United Kingdom, France, Germany and Poland are main spoilers. They want to pump Ukrainian regime with arms to defeat Russia. It's totally unacceptable. We are ready to negotiate, but we don't consider current president of Ukraine, Zelenskyy, as illegitimate. We call him former president of Ukraine because
former president.
Former, we call him because he is in power, continues to be in power without elections.
But he has argued that it is because of elections and because of the war, ongoing hostilities, that Ukraine cannot afford an election.
He should read the constitution of Ukraine very attentively, first of all. Secondly, during civil war in Sri Lanka, you also had elections, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm mistaken, please correct me.
You're right, Excellency. I'd like to talk about Ukraine here a little. More than a month after Ukraine signed this landmark agreement with the United States on critical minerals, granting the US a stake in its mineral reserves. Now, Kiev is striving to show the Trump administration that you just said you appreciate, seeking a swift sort of like support and move ahead in terms of agreements. What is this going to look like?
First of all, we consider them as a puppet regime. They cannot survive without Western help. And do you remember the scandal meeting between President Trump and former President Zelenskyy in the Oval Cabinet at the White House, February 28th? It was a big scandal.
Why do you say it's a scandal?
And this was scandal because they were just, it was, you know, he just, please, if you have a possibility, you can watch this meeting once again, February 28th, when he was told by G.D. Vance, Vice President, and Donald Trump,
yes, it was
some arguments, and he rejected it, everything. Biden's administration spent $300 billion to support this puppet regime, and they want something to get back.
Ambassador, is Russia concerned about this ongoing deal with the United States about critical minerals?
No.
Most of the stake will be given to the United States, and Ukraine is going to be left with next to nothing.
It's up to the Ukrainian regime to decide, you know. It's up to the United States and to Ukrainian Kiev regime. But these raw materials partially are on the territory which are under our control. That's very interesting.
So most of it is under Russian control?
Not most, I don't know exactly, but some of the territories are under our control.
So with the US support to Ukraine, how is it going to, how is the world going to see this war between Ukraine and Russia?
I don't think that US support continues to be the same as it was before. That's why we have very constructive contacts with current American administration. Unlike the previous one, they are ready to listen to us. They are ready to, let's say, to take into consideration our security concerns, unlike previous one, because they were ignored totally. We don't want to see military structure of NATO close to our borders. It's totally, we told them, just forget about membership of Ukraine in NATO. For us, it's totally unacceptable. They will never join NATO.
Is there a possibility of ceasefire?
You know, there are nuances, you know. We were deceived many times. For example, Minsk agreement, when it was signed, the guarantees were Poland, France and Germany. And Angela Merkel and François Hollande, former Chancellor of Germany and French President, they later said that we were not ready to implement the Minsk agreement. We wanted also to give Ukrainians the possibility to strengthen their military capability. Istanbul negotiations, we were very close to a very good deal in March 2022. Then Boris Johnson came to Kiev and said, no peace deal with Russia, continue. And thanks to him, we can see more and more cemeteries in Ukraine. He's responsible also. So we were deceived many, many times. So we need very solid guarantees. We are not ready to repeat our, I think, previous, I don't want to say mistakes, but we don't want to be as naive as they think. No trust.
When we look at the casualties in this war, it is important that the world sees a cessation of hostilities. We're talking about Operation Spider's Web, 1st of June, where Ukraine's SBU launched a deep strike drone raid targeting 5 major Russian air bases, and in retaliation Russia executed what is described as the largest combined missile and drone barrage. And on the 17th of June we're looking at another massive Russian drone missile, and Ukraine launched drone strikes deep into Russian territories, and the list goes on. Casualties are reported from both sides. Peace talks again resumed in Istanbul in early June, and we are looking at Ukraine's Vladimir Zelenskyy attending the G7 summit mid-June, and North Korea now reportedly dispatching thousands of engineers and deminers to assist Russian frontline reconstruction. So what is the next step in Russia's view for the conflict? You gave us an answer about the possibility of a ceasefire or not. But what is Russia expecting here from whether it's the West that is mediating or other countries like Istanbul, North Korea and other countries that are mediating? What is really going to be the expectation? What's at stake?
North Korea isn't mediating. They help us. They help us and provide us with personnel, and they were fighting to kick out Ukrainian aggressors from Kursk region of the Russian Federation. And as you just mentioned correctly, we invited engineers, some 5,000 plus 1,000 military specialists to recover or restore Kursk region. But as to our possible peace deal with Ukraine, we don't want this, ceasefire only, it's not enough. We would like to have tangible, sustainable peace, but with very strong guarantees, because once again, we were deceived many times. Do you know what was our main mistake, as President Putin said? Our main mistake was that we trusted Western countries. We trusted their promises, we trusted their goodwill, but they turned to be liars, big liars. And what we see now is a double standard policy and hypocrisy. What we see, we compare Palestinian people suffering in Gaza, in Lebanon and in Ukraine. They keep silence about what's going on in Gaza. They keep silence, totally. It's not very important for them. Only, some organizations, NGOs and so on. But the government, they just don't just care about it. But we have very clear demands in terms of Ukraine. My president said, in June last year, demilitarization of Ukraine, neutral status of Ukraine, the new Crimea plus 4 regions of Ukraine will come back to the Russian Federation, and lifting all sanctions. Our demands are quite clear. They have 2 options, either to accept our demands or we will continue our military operation.
Moving on to talk about Israel-Iran hostilities that are escalating, and Middle Eastern tensions that are really creating shockwaves across the globe. Russia has historically been maintained firm diplomatic channels with Israel, and at the same time President Vladimir Putin said Russia is ready to mediate a peace deal between Israel and Iran, suggesting a framework that allows Iran to maintain peaceful nuclear program while addressing Israel's security concerns. We're talking about nuclear weapons here. We're talking about attacks that will shake this part of the world and have repercussions for decades and years to come.
First of all, I would like to say that I generally spent in Iran 16 years.
16, this is on top of the 11 years?
Yeah, okay. 16 years as diplomat since 1994 to 1999.
Okay.
And then as ambassador since 2011 till 2022. I completed my mission in September 2022, and I came to Sri Lanka at the end of October.
So the situation in Iran is probably very close to your heart as well.
Of course, very. Because one of my sons was born in Iran. And he's now working in the Iranian desk of the foreign ministry. And I just had the honor to translate for Iranian President Khatami with President Putin in 2001, when President Khatami visited Russian Federation. And I presented my credentials to former President Ahmadinejad. So just Iran is very close to my heart. Let's say in just in 2015, 5+1, USA, Russia, China, France, Germany, and UK started negotiations, very long negotiations with Iran about Iranian nuclear program. And we managed to strike a deal, JCPOA, in 2015. It was a very good deal. And partially some sanctions against Iran were lifted. Western companies started to come to Iran. And there was a good possibility to develop Iranian peaceful nuclear program. And the process of enrichment of Iranian uranium was limited. And then President Trump came to power and decided to withdraw from this JCPOA in 2018. Despite the fact that JCPOA was endorsed by the United Nations Security Council resolution 2231. But he decided to withdraw, and now he's talking about new deal. And the Iranians said, we are ready. And there were several rounds of non-direct negotiations between Iran and USA, thanks to Omani mediation. And the next round was set in Oman for June 15. And Israelis started targeting Iran, attacking Iran a day before. A day before. And just, it was an unprovoked attack. I'm not sure, I don't agree with Iranians wanted to attack Israel or to use nuclear weapons. Iran, unlike some other nuclear powers, those who have it but didn't declare it officially, they have joined NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty.
But now the Iranian parliament is discussing and looking at passing a bill to withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Isn't this going to have great risks on the rest of the world as well?
You know, it's a very interesting question, but the decision maker was also not only Iranian parliament, because I can understand their feelings. I don't want to say that I justify them, because for us it's unacceptable that any country, we don't welcome, because the number of countries who possess this nuclear weapon should be increased. It's very dangerous. But, you know, spiritual leader of Iran, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, banned the use and the producing of nuclear weapon because he issued a so-called fatwa according to Islamic legislation. And that's why, just once again, Iran has right to have peaceful nuclear program, and we help Iranians. Just we help them to complete Bushehr nuclear power station in the southern part of Iran. So, but we are ready to mediate between Iran and Israel, and my president was in touch with Benjamin Netanyahu and with Mr. Masoud Pezeshkian, the president of Iran. We are ready to mediate, but I'm not sure that Israelis are ready to do it, unfortunately.
Russia, a global power, a major influencer across the globe, to many parts of the world, is looked at as a power that can shift and create changes in terms of global order at present. But the question about Russia as a mediator, there is also a question whether Russia, whether there's credibility, especially with the kind of engagements, the military operation with Ukraine. So how is Russia going to face this?
We can be mediator, but I think it has nothing to do with our special military operation in Ukraine. Once again, we were forced to start it. When the battle is inevitable, like Bonaparte said, when the battle is inevitable, you must strike the first. Otherwise, they would have killed many Russians in Donbass. It's very different, you know. Once again, we are ready to mediate between Iran and Israel, but in terms of Ukraine, we just clearly said we don't want to see threat close to our borders. Can you imagine Russian missiles close to American territory? Their reaction. It was in 1962 during Caribbean crisis when John Kennedy was ready to start Third World War. We don't want to see once again NATO military structure too close to our border. And once again, we don't pose any threat to NATO countries. No. And President Putin said once again, those who tell it, say it, they deceive their people, their taxpayers. And, you know, we are not afraid of anything, of any other country. We are strong enough. We are a nuclear power. It's very important to keep in mind it is impossible to defeat nuclear power. We are ready to normalize our relations with European countries. But if they want it, they must demonstrate the initiative. They have cut, not we. You know? And another example, when I was in Iran, before the special military operations, I had very good relations with Western diplomats. Immediately, they have got instructions to cut all contacts with Russian ambassadors, not only with me, with all. It's very childish. We are diplomats. We want to communicate, to talk to each other. But we have embassies. Now, once again, we have very constructive dialogue with the United States of America, and we highly appreciate it.
What is the impact of sanctions on Russia? We're talking about financial sanctions from US, EU, UK, Canada, Japan, Australia, freezing hundreds of billions in Russian central bank reserves abroad, and major state-owned banks sanctioned or removed from the Society for World Interbank Financial Telecommunication, and restrictions on US dollar, euro and yen transactions as well, and Russian response has been de-dollarization efforts accelerated. Russia boosts yuan, rupee and crypto use in trade. I'd like to talk about that, but what is really the impact? Is that felt in Russia, these sanctions? You know,
there's a lose-lose game. They impose sanctions and we impose counter-sanctions. Of course, it's sort of damage for our economy, but also damage for them. For example, they will deprive European countries from getting very cheap Russian natural gas. Germany, they used to get it from pipeline, gas pipeline, Baltic Sea. And the Americans and their Western puppies decided to blow it up. It was a terrorist attack. I say it openly. It was a terrorist attack against this pipeline in the Baltic Sea. Investigation continues for more than 3 years. Where are the results? We are ready to participate. They said, no, 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 because they knew. Now they say we just stopped our dependence on Russian natural gas. But now they have to buy LNG. What's more suitable, LNG or natural gas? Of course, they decided to freeze Russian deposits, you are right. But also we have adopted countermeasures. And many Western companies would like to come back to Russian market. We see now, just today, tomorrow, yesterday, started a St. Petersburg International Business Forum. And a lot of businessmen from European countries, from USA came and they participate in this business forum because they understand it's a lose-lose game. And we will use national currencies more and more among BRICS countries, first of all. And there is a bank, BRICS Bank, and the chairperson of bank is Dilma Rousseff, former president of Brazil. She's now in St. Petersburg. She met with President Putin, and we will continue to use much more yuan, rupee, and the currencies, national currencies, especially in our trade with CIS countries.
Nuclear fuel, US and EU, as of 2025 imposed phase-out bans on Russian enriched uranium, but with exemptions, especially in Eastern Europe and US utilities. Why?
Because we constructed a nuclear power plant in Hungary, Paks. And also, you know, as to their threat to stop oil import and gas import from Russia, Slovakia and Hungary are against. And Hungary threatened that if you implement this, the ban for import of gas and oil for Hungary from the Russian Federation, will stop electricity supply for Ukraine. No choice. They don't want to sacrifice the prosperity of the Hungarian people for the Ukrainian regime. By the way, in Ukraine, not only the rights of Russian minority was just violated, but also the rights of Hungarian minority, Romanian minority, and others. There are many Hungarians living in the western part of Ukraine, by the way, and Romanians as well.
Excellency, we're also looking at technology and industrial controls, export bans on semiconductors, advanced electronics, and cut off from major global suppliers. Aerospace and defense, also there is a ban where Boeing and Airbus ceased all parts services from Russia, and Russia was banned from leading aircraft from Western firms. Again, Russia responded too with bans on exports of critical materials and boosted exports to China. So I read out all this just to ask you, given the fact that Russia has weathered the storm of continued sanctions by deepening trade cooperation with friendly and neutral nations, is there an opportunity for Sri Lanka here going forward?
You know, there is, of course, when we are ready. And we just were talking about it with Sri Lankan officials after my coming here. But once again, just one of my proposals, not only mine, but of my government, to set up a small nuclear power plant. But I don't raise this issue anymore.
Were there any discussions?
No discussions.
Because I remember there were news items a few years ago. Actually, about 2 years ago. Since 2 years, we've been talking about it.
Yes, there are some proposals from our side, and there were some discussions between our Rosatom and the Sri Lankan colleagues, and our colleagues know what they should do to start the process of negotiations. We are ready to start, but not only in this case, but also in other fields of our possible cooperation. One of the main obstacles is sanctions.
I think
also MIR cards, as I just is this payment system of the Russian Federation, MIR card. Also, Russian tourists who are coming here, they cannot use Russian cards, not only Russian, because the countries which are just ready to adopt it, they will be subjected to the secondary sanctions of the United States. That's why Russians who are coming here, they have to use cash mainly. Cash or maybe the credit cards of other countries, other friendly countries.
I think we'd like to speak more about Russia and Sri Lanka. Russian tourists make a large component of Sri Lanka's tourism arrivals as well, but we'll discuss all this when we return after a short break. We are in conversation with Ambassador Levan Dzhagaryan, the Russian ambassador to Sri Lanka. Welcome back. We are in conversation with Russian ambassador to Sri Lanka and the Maldives, Levan Dzhagaryan, who is in studios at Hyde Park on Derana 24 once again to discuss not just the situation in Russia, but Russia's recent offer to mediate in the Israeli-Iranian situation where hostilities have escalated, and how Sri Lanka can look at really solving our own issues here at home with upcoming US sanctions to be imposed on the country and constraints to other products that are usually bound to Sri Lanka. Ambassador, we were talking about Russia's sanctions and how other countries that are friendly to Russia and are neutral have continued to work with Russia amidst the sanctions. Now, Russia-India oil deal is significant here. A 10-year term of Russia's state oil giant Rosneft committed to supply India's Reliance Industries with nearly 500,000 barrels, and there is cargo structure to pricing terms negotiated which are lower than what India would have otherwise imported, and it also includes an annual review of pricing. How is this going so far, the agreement?
India and China are one of the main consumers of Russian oil, and we just despite sanctions and so on, we highly appreciate it because of the, let's say, sovereign decision, because China and India are great independent country. And just we will continue this cooperation with our friends, with our neighbors, and despite these obstacles which are created by the Western countries. And as to Sri Lanka, we understand these obstacles as a main obstacle means the sanctions for our cooperation in this field. But in Moscow in October every year we conduct so-called Russian Energy Week. And before coming here in 2022, I saw in Moscow, I met with former ministers of Sri Lanka who came and participated at Russia Energy Week in Moscow. It was a good possibility to meet with Russian counterparts, with Russian officials.
This was in
October 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Susil Primajanta came, and also Mr. Nalin Fernando. They came, I met with them, and I accompanied them during their negotiation meetings, not only with Russian officials from Ministry of Energy, but also from gas and oil companies. And just they explained what is necessary to do to help Sri Lanka and so on. But after that, in 2023, 2024, no one came to participate to this in the work of this energy conference. And once again, we invited your officials to go to Moscow in October. So it's up to them to adopt any decision. But we are ready. Last year, Mr. Sechin, who is CEO of Rosneft, wanted to come here to Sri Lanka. You mentioned Rosneft, yes? Yeah. But he didn't manage to come here because of some, let's say, there were some reasons.
Reasons, if you may share with us?
No, it was personal reasons.
Okay, nothing to do with the two countries.
No.
But despite US pressure, Indian crude imports from Russia continue, and Russia is dominating crude oil exports to India at this time. Sri Lanka was heavily reliant on Iranian crude as well, but given supply constraints surrounding oil supply from the Middle East and ongoing tensions, Sri Lanka will have to look at increasing the percentage of crude that comes from elsewhere. And Russia plays a major role. Isn't there a possibility for Sri Lanka to look at crude imports either via India, or are there any discussions to obtain Russian crude to Sri Lanka?
Why not? It's a very wise decision, I think. Once again, if you want to negotiate, you should go to Moscow, your officials, and to discuss with Russian counterparts this issue. It's possible. And they have an invitation to go to Moscow.
Has this been on the cards? Have any of our officials, or is this even a conversation currently? Because Sri Lanka was reliant on Russian crude, 49% at a time.
Maybe. But once again, it's better for professionals to discuss. And they should be in contact. Russian Foreign Energy Ministry and Sri Lankan Energy Ministry. It's very important.
Do you have similar deals with other countries?
What do you mean?
Despite sanctions, with any smaller countries that you're working with, whether it's oil or other products that are needed for certain countries?
We are working hard, but we cannot disclose all issues. It's a very sensitive issue.
Ambassador, you've urged Sri Lanka to take proactive measures to obtain membership of the BRICS, and particularly in terms of reaching out to the current chair, Brazil. Has the Sri Lankan government taken any recent measures in this regard, or has Russia mediated or maybe encouraged Sri Lanka in this regard?
You know, last year there was a summit in Kazan. I have already said it several times in different auditoriums, in Sirimovo Bandaranaike International Forum, and the issue of membership, there are also other issues like status of dialogue partner, observer, but now it's necessary to discuss with all member states. Because member states, not only with Russia, with other member states. But last year we were chairperson of BRICS, and former Foreign Secretary Aruni Dzhagaryan visited Kazan. She had some talks, negotiations in Kazan with Russian officials. Now it's necessary to talk to Brazilian chairperson.
Given your call for Sri Lanka to take proactive measures, what really are the benefits here for Sri Lanka given the current situation?
You know, I can't speak on behalf of your government. It's up to you. It's your sovereign decision whether to make closer your cooperation with BRICS or not. It's up to you.
But there must be, as ambassador of Russia to Sri Lanka, you're privy to most of these conversations that are ongoing. And I'm sure you have an understanding. You've been calling for Sri Lanka to act proactively. How can Sri Lanka work in this regard?
Once again, you know, many countries are demonstrating their willingness to join BRICS. For example, Vietnam has got a status of a dialogue partner, if I'm not mistaken. Many other countries, you know, the number of members has been increased from 5 till 11. And many countries want to join it. I think it will be very profitable for Sri Lanka to cooperate closer with BRICS. But once again, it's your decision, it's your sovereign decision. We have no problems with Sri Lanka, any kind of cooperation with BRICS. We are in favor. But speak with other member states.
Ambassador, you mentioned earlier before we went into the break that the nuclear energy consultations somehow stalled, but given Sri Lanka's current energy requirements and grid capabilities, nuclear power integration appears not to be practical at present. Is that the concern?
No concern. Once again, we are ready to start negotiations. Now there are some issues, some problems to be settled down. But look, Russia is the only country which has enough expertise and experience to set up nuclear power plants. In India, in Bangladesh, we will start in Myanmar, we will start in Vietnam.
Is that coming up?
Yeah, yeah. In Turkey, we will complete it very soon. In Hungary, in Egypt, we are negotiating. Many countries. And
what are really the benefits here?
I think when you use nuclear energy from nuclear power plant, it's a sort of alternative to coal, to oil, because for environment, nuclear is much more acceptable for environment. And also green energy. Wind, solar, it's okay, but you know, climate change can have very unpredictable impacts. Look what's going in Europe. They want to revive the use of coal and gas and so on. They don't rely only on renewable energy. The policy of greens, so-called greens, is total failure in Europe.
Energy has been a major question here in Sri Lanka. At one time, energy was a crisis in the country.
I was told, yes, I know, I heard about it.
Yes, will embracing nuclear energy for a generation of power help Sri Lanka reduce the price component?
You know, I'm not an economist. It's necessary to calculate, to make all necessary calculations. But once upon, we have also Sri Lanka is an island surrounded by ocean. We have an experience to set up floating nuclear power plant, floating on water. It's very. We have it in the far east, where it's it's difficult to provide electricity for these far regions which are just very far from, from power stations and so on. So there are some navies, floating power stations which produce electricity and supply some towns, some cities. I think it's also important, but it's necessary to talk, to sit down and to talk. But first of all, it's necessary to have a practical decision. But again, it's your domestic issue, it's your sovereign decision. Unlike some countries, we don't intervene into domestic affairs of independent countries.
How is Russia working with the new government?
We have normal relations. I have very good contacts in the foreign ministry, and we highly appreciate the balanced policy of the new government in terms of Ukrainian crisis, and we do believe that this balanced and neutral foreign policy towards Ukrainian crisis, despite the pressure, will continue, and Sri Lanka will remain in the list of friendly countries.
I have a number of questions about whether there's a possibility to create a neutral cooperative corridor of maritime, trade, energy routes and multilateral dialogues between Sri Lanka and Russia, and a lot of trade relations, and I believe, as you said, it's for the Sri Lankan government to decide despite sanctions. We'll talk a little on tourism before we wrap up. I'm told we don't have much time. Russian tourists are seen traveling to a lot of tourist destinations, and Sri Lanka one among them. But what more can be done to establish stronger relations in people-to-people contact and connectivity?
Recently, Deputy Foreign Minister, who is responsible for tourism, Mr. Ruvan Ranasinghe, visited Russia. He had numerous talks, negotiations, meetings in ministries with Aeroflot and some other his colleagues, very fruitful, and just I think he has much more information than me, but I would like to confirm once again that Sri Lanka continues to be one of the important destinations for Russian tourists who are coming here. But you know, we don't have direct flights between Russia and Sri Lanka. It was suspended for 6 months. Hopefully the direct flights will resume in the beginning of October, because some season is not a very good season for suitable season, as far as I heard, for the western bank of Sri Lanka. But I do believe that they will come a lot, because there will be flights not only to Colombo but also to Mattala airport. And you know, and as I declared during our National Day, I would like to repeat it once again. My message to Russians that you are not very welcome in Europe, and please come to Sri Lanka and other friendly Asian countries. Come to Sri Lanka and spend your money in Sri Lanka and other friendly Asian countries. When I say unfriendly, I don't mean the people of European countries. They are friendly. We respect them very much. Unfriendly governments.
I believe you have had the chance to visit Sri Lanka during these 3 years that you have been posted here.
2 years and a half.
2.5. Since 2022?
October.
October, okay. We have a few more months to go. How has your travels in Sri Lanka been?
I'm deeply impressed. I was recently in Ella. It's incredible. And I was also in Trincomalee. It's very beautiful. And you have all the possibilities to continue to develop this island of paradise. And I wish you, friendly people of Sri Lanka, to continue their efforts to improve the living standards of Sri Lankan people. They deserve it. And as much as possible, we are ready to support.
And Sri Lankan spicy food, I hope you've developed a palate for spices.
Not for me, thank you. Not for me.
Ambassador, thank you very much for your time here, Excellency.
Thank you.
We are indeed thankful for you taking the time to be here to join us at Hyde Park once again.
Thank you very much. I'm ready to come here next year. If you invite me.
Certainly. We'd love to have you here.
Thank you.
Ambassador Levan Dzhagaryan, the Russian ambassador to Sri Lanka and the Maldives, talking to us about current global situation, the Russian situation, and what's the way out with Ukraine as the world looks for peace and prosperity across the globe, and how Sri Lanka can benefit out of long-standing relations with Russia. We'll see you again next week with yet another discussion here at Hyde Park on Other Derana 24. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.